Hey everyone, this is Olay Shorunke from Laddering Your Success, and you're listening to the LYS Podcast.
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Another beautiful day here in Houston, Texas. Hope you're doing all right. We're here for another Sunday for LYS Free Student Mentoring with me, Olay, and Festus Amoye. Festus, how you doing today?
What's good, everybody? Happy Sunday. I'm doing great, Olay. I'm, feeling healthy, feeling strong. So yeah, man, that's pretty much it.
We call you Antoine Fisher. Still here, still standing. I'm still strong.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. That's it.
I hear it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Folks, as we always say, thank you so much for showing up. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, your month, your week, your year, your hour to just take a quick look and see what we're doing with the pre-student mentoring. If you're not familiar, Laddering Your Success, we're a social profit geared towards first generation, non-traditional, minority students, giving them access to a sense of purpose and fulfillment to help them with their lives, right? We're basically trying to start that path of generational wealth. How do we do that? Our being, knowing, doing methodology, right? The personhood, being who you are, knowing about yourself, your surroundings, your environment, those who came before you that determine where you are in your present to help you get to a brighter future, right? And the do, right? How do we do these things? How do we move in a certain type of way to give us access to those things, right? Folks, it's a labor of love. We're pushing, we're moving, we're getting stronger and stronger. Like we said earlier with Antoine Fisher, getting stronger every day. So we're gonna jump right in and go right into our student mentoring. What are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about conflict resolution. We're talking about influences. Conflict resolution and influences. We live in an influencer culture, right? We live in a culture today where if you see someone and they have a certain, I was gonna say je ne sais quoi. I have no idea what that means, but they have a certain, yeah, right? They have a certain movement, right? They have a certain, something about them. You can't really put your finger on it, right? Could be the way they sound when they speak. It could be the way their hand gestures. It could be the way they look, right? Something about them makes you want to follow. Something about them makes you want to be better. Something about them makes you naturally gravitate towards them, right? We're going to talk about those things that those people have, why they influence you, and I think even more importantly, what are those traits, those skills? What are those things about you that make you an influencer to other people? I think that's one of the biggest things that we fail to think about or fail to look at. When we're looking at all those people, we forget that we are huge influences on other people. One of the biggest things, that's one of the examples right there, my man. And he doesn't realize, right? That we are all influences on other people. And it was one of those cool things that I didn't realize till after high school. I would meet people that were like in classes below me, and they were like, man, I just want to let you know, like, I looked up to you so much. And I'm like, what? Me? I had no idea what I was doing. You look like you know what you were doing. I looked up to you a lot. Or people in church, when I played football, they're like, man, even when you tore your ACL, man, I would see you coming in with your knee brace looking like Stone Cold. And I just wanted to be like, I was just like, man, he's such a warrior, man. I just want to be like that. I'm just like, really? I'm like, man, I had no idea. So I think we take that for granted. It's one of those things we're just not thinking about because we're so concerned about how we navigate this world for ourselves. We forget that in our journey, we are guiding others. And so we need to be really cognizant. We need to be really aware. We need to have our eyes open. We need to be cautious of those things, right? And how it affects others, right? So let's jump right in. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about some things that we talk about in LYS, right? So the people that you have in your life provide the structure for who you are, right? Those people that you naturally gravitate towards. Those people build the structure of your life. What does that mean? Well, if you live in an area that's not so great, and there may be a lot of people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing. They're selling drugs. They're involved in violent activities, violent crimes, right? Stealing, theft, beat battery, just different things like that. Those things are going to affect you in what you see and in ways that what you don't see, right? Or what you don't feel subconsciously, right? those things will then affect your actions and the other types of people that you bring around you. So it's very cognizant to think about that. In relation to in relation to laddering your success and everything that we talk about, those things can make your ladder weak as you're climbing up your ladder. Those things can make that ladder weak as you're climbing up, right? You don't have that DeWalt Black & Decker fully functioning sturdy ladder that can go up to 30 feet. You've got that 50-year-old left in a dilapidated building ladder that's made out of wood with old hinges.
Hey,
Every time you put a step on it, right? You wobbling, you're shaking. I don't know about you. I get on a ladder like that. Look, I'm 35. I'm dealing with something called inflammation. Okay. When I get on ladders like that, your body starts shaking, right? On the ladder, it does something to you, right? I like to get on the ladder and put that foot down, and I know I'm sturdy. I'm moving up sturdy. I'm moving sturdy, right? That's what you want.
hey,
And so,
I'm sorry. It's so funny that you mentioned that, man. There's like this meme going around where it's, I guess some people say it's a lady, some people say it's a man. They're on the ladder on the side of the house. They're getting ready to go up, and they're up, and then next, it just falls, and they fall on their back, and it breaks like the porch steps, and then they're like, oh, and then like the person walks up and is like, honey, are you okay? And as you were describing the ladder that was the weaker ladder, I just thought about that meme, and I think so often we wish we could be born into these silver spoon families and different types of things like that. But it's interesting when you actually start doing the research and the data. Oftentimes, the families where everything's handed to them, they tend to lose what was handed to them. And a very, very interesting example of this that us adults would recognize, maybe not the teens so much, is Anderson Cooper. So you know who Anderson Cooper is, right?
Yeah.
And so he's related to the Vanderbilts. And so the Vanderbilts were probably the richest family, or competed as one of the richest families in America in the 1900s, right? Late 1800s, 1900s. And so yeah, that family completely lost his wealth. And it's like he's having to be a news anchor, and he's only 3 generations removed. So literally the Vanderbilt was his grandfather, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, it was, his grandfather.
Yeah.
So then there's his father, and then his mom is actually directing that line. So
that's Gloria, right? I believe that's Gloria.
I believe
right?
so. Yeah. And so how does that help us when we think about our influences and we think about conflict? It helps us because, number one, you could have it all, but the wrong influence, you could lose it all.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, you could have nothing, and with the right influences, you can gain something. Because a lot of times when we just talk about like in life and how we're, quote unquote successful, we think it's all about like you go from 0 to 100. You go from, I don't have any money, I don't have any education. Next, I'm a TikTok influencer and I'm a star. And the reality is, a lot of these people go through hardships. This is where, they talk about like the lottery curse. I don't know if you've ever heard of the lottery curse, but a person wins the lotto, and usually within 3 to 5 years, they're in prison, they're dead, or they're bankrupt, or divorced. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes these great amounts of wealth. So that's why it's so important to build yourself up, and be intentional about how you climb your ladder, so that you can sustain yourself on the ladder, number one, and then number two, so that you don't get this envy thing where you're just looking around constantly, and so then you're not happy from within, and that creates internal conflict. So again, back over to you, man. I just think that was really key what you said.
It always reminded me, and I'll tell you this, I went to church today, and it was a really, really good sermon. He was kind of reminding me of this verse. He was saying, you got an $80,000 car, but you make $40,000. A lot of the things that you hear Dave Ramsey talking about, and before he goes, how could you be so stupid? But I'm always reminded of this Bible verse, and I've really used it, a lot in my life, where he was saying, I'm paraphrasing, but handle the small things so when I give you the big things, you know how to take care of it. And so I always try to think about it like, your car, it's not a Mercedes Benz, it's not a Porsche, it's not a Lamborghini, but you've got to treat it and maintain it. If you can't handle the simple maintenance of this car, what are you going to do when you get something that requires so much more effort and so much more care, right? So you got to be able to take care of those little things first so you can maintain those bigger things when you get more responsibility. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? The person, you yourself, you've got to maintain, you've got to build yourself up. So when you get access, when you start getting these things, you're able to make wise decisions. You have people around you who you can trust, who can give you good insight, right? To help you move on. Just imagine, think about the lotto curse, kind of like what Festus mentioned. Think about if these people had a solid foundation, right? It's almost like there's a reason why they won the lotto, or there's a reason why they were given that, right? They couldn't manage what they had, right? And that's essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about managing what you have, right? But on top of all of that is managing yourself, right? So earlier we talked about the people that are around you. Sorry, Festus, were you gonna say something?
That's a whole bar right there. Just managing yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's a whole bar right there.
I tell you, absolutely. Yes, sir. So when we talk about earlier, we we're talking about the people that are around you that affect you and make you who you are. It doesn't mean that these people are intentionally bad or they can't help you. It simply means that you have found something that is kind of blocking you or preventing you from growth, right? You have to understand, and this is one of the things I learned from Laddering Your Success. If the only thing a person knows is to do wrong or to do evil, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do wrong. They're going to do evil because that's all they know. Think about when you go to a new place, a new culture. Think about when you go to, I remember the first time I went to River Oaks. I was like, so you walk out the house and this is what you see?
Oh,
Y'all
yeah.
see all this nice stuff here?
Huh? Oh, yeah.
A random Lambo, like I see a Honda or a Toyota Tercel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see how y'all doing, right? It just automatically changes the way you view your world, right? And so you got to find those weaknesses in them or in yourself that need to be corrected in your friends, in your family, right? And so with that, one of the important things that we need to understand is something called conflict resolution. Very simple, conflict resolution. And don't think that just because you're a teen that you're not equipped or this is something that you should not know. The sooner you learn this, the better you're going to be. I promise you, I promise you, there are 7-8-year-olds who use this.
Oh yeah,
who understand
100%.
conflict resolution.
100%.
So if they can, I see no reason why you can. Here's why. One thing that I truly believe in is that conflict is inevitable. That means no matter what you do, no matter where you are, no matter how you try, there is going to be some sort of conflict, two heads that butt. There's going to be some sort of wall in your way. It could be a person, it could be an event, it could be a thing, but conflict is inevitable, right? And so if you have the tools to deal with that conflict, it's going to help you grow, and it's going to help the other person. If it's a person, it's going to help you grow. It's going to help you navigate, right? Very good. So this doesn't mean if you're in a conflict with someone, it's getting in your way. Conflict resolution is very good for leadership, believe it or not. That's trust me, even as an adult, conflict resolution is one of those things that is, think about it. If you're a leader, you're usually leading people, right? And so it's one of those things that you have to be able to deal with because conflict is inevitable. There you go. So let's talk about what this does. It reduces stress in an already kind of hectic environment, right? It reduces stress because it's a calming presence to know that even though there's a conflict, there's a way we go about dealing with it. It brings a sense of peace. Think about it when two kids are arguing in the classroom and the teacher comes and y'all talk about it and you realize that it really wasn't even a big deal. And the teacher says, shake each other's hands or give each other a hug, and y'all go about your separate ways. Before you know it, y'all are back out there during recess playing outside together, the same two people who are going back and forth, right? So it reduces stress. It brings a sense of peace. It's great for leadership. It helps you grow and mature, right? It helps you grow and mature. So we're just going to go over some of these steps here. First step one, conflict resolution. Decide what you're willing to give up or lose and what you want to gain. If there's a conflict, right? If there's a conflict, you need to decide, what are you going to give up? What are you willing to lose? And what do you want to gain? A lot of times we can call this compromise, right? We can call this compromise. And believe it or not, this is how the world deals with each other. This is how countries deal with each other. If you're in school and you hear about something called a treaty, an alliance, a compromise, like the Great Compromise, right? This is literally groups or factions coming together and saying, hey, this is what we're willing to give up. This is what we're willing to give up. But this, we need this, right? And you got another group of people saying, this is what we're willing to give up, but we really need this. And what happens? We come together, right? Right? That's first step of conflict resolution. What do you want to give up? What do you want to gain? All right. Second step, identify the problem. You've got to identify or figure out what's the core issue that you're dealing with here, right? If it's in a personal relationship, you're saying, do you have a problem with the person, right? Or is a person doing something to you and that's creating a problem? If it's situational, you got to ask yourself, is it a matter of current fact, right? For example, the dishes have not been done. The house is not clean. This is not picked up, right? Second step, identify the problem. First step, what are you willing to lose? What are you willing to gain? Step two, identify the problem, find the problem, right? If you're thinking about something that's going on in your environment, right? These folks keep acting up around me. On my way home from school, they're trying to get me to join a gang, do drugs, involve myself in illegal or violent activities, right? That's identifying the problem. Why? You don't want to do that, right? What are you willing to give up? I'm willing to give up my peace. Well, not necessarily my peace, but I'm willing to give up the way I go home, maybe going a different way, right? What is something that you're not going to let go? No matter what, I'm not going to do these activities.
Man,
right?
you bring up just such a huge point. And when I was writing this, and people think, well, why are you thinking about what you want to give up from the jump? Why are you thinking about what you want to gain from the jump before you even, identify the problem? It's because a lot of times, once we go into conflict, the conflict itself stirs us up so much that we're no longer able to draw lines in our mind, because now it's just about winning. You see what I'm saying? And if you process, okay, and this is the thing, I had to do this a lot in the military, because in the military, you have to imagine you are literally sleeping in an open bay with guys you don't know from Sam I Am. You just get there, you put your bags down, now you're quote unquote family. And it's like your family when you're doing stuff, but then as soon as you get off the clock, it's like, okay, who's fighting tonight, right? And the thing is, if you don't process what I'm willing to give up and what I'm willing to gain before you even go into those conflicts, you're going to get baited every single time, because now you're fully emotionally invested. And so this is where just thinking about it and being like, okay, what I'm willing to give up. Maybe it's something as simple as I'm going to quote unquote look like a punk right now. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't have to give up any physical thing. I'm just going to quote unquote look like a punk. But like you said, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's an extra 5 minutes on my walk so I don't have to go in that direction. But then it's, what am I looking to gain? Okay, if I keep my peace and if I keep myself from getting in these situations, you know what I'm saying? Then it might save me from costing me something greater that I wasn't actually willing to give up. And a good example of that is, you growing up, you got friends, and the friends are influences and stuff like that. You got parents like, don't hang around this person, don't hang around this person. And you're like, man, that's my boy, that's my girl. You know what I'm saying? We cool, whatever. And then next, people start getting jail time. And it's like, so you're telling me you're willing to give up 5 years instead of have a conversation about like, yo, we need to chill on that. And see, oftentimes it's like, well, I didn't want to lose them as a friend, but you gave up 5 years in prison. You see what I'm saying? And this is literally a good close friend of me. Is like, dog, you gave up 5 years. But the thing is, since we had that conversation, when you wanted to keep going, I had to back up because that already cued me in. You see what I'm saying? And this is the thing, a lot of people don't, especially us young kids, you know, us young kids, I consider myself a young kid, but we don't do this, we don't do the math. You know what I mean? There's a certain amount of math involved. So please take it away, Olay.
No, I mean, wonderful. Absolutely, man. I was thinking about it when you were talking about it, just that idea of, you know, what are you really giving up? What are you really giving up? You know, yeah, it may hurt to give up that friendship, but in this case, when you talk about what you're gaining 5 years in prison. Does that, you know, one of the things I talk to my kids about is common sense. Giving up that friendship for 5 years in prison, I don't know about you. I mean, I like to have an alarm clock wake me up and then hit the snooze as many times as I choose in the freedom of my bed, right? Not someone else, you know, waking me up.
Oh,
So
man.
you got to think about
Talk about it. Talk about it.
We got to really think about those things, right? This is a very, very important one. And I think this is one of those things that that's very key, especially today when we, you know, with all this talk about social emotional learning and being able to express yourself, you need to identify why you're upset, right? So that's the third step. So we've talked about deciding what you're willing to give up, what you're willing to gain, what you want to gain. We've talked about identifying the problem. And now we're talking about identifying why you're upset, right? Because clearly step two, if there's a problem, it's going to make you upset. So you need to talk about why that problem is making you upset. Okay. If someone is being rude, why is it making you upset? Because it makes me sad. It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me vulnerable. It doesn't make me happy. I come in and I automatically change as soon as I come in because of the way you treat me. Right? The dishes haven't been done. If the dishes haven't been done, why is this making me upset? It's making me upset because this is something that you've been asked to do. I've asked you repeatedly and you still have not done it. And I come in and I've been working and I've been doing all these things. I come in and I see this and I'm like, what's going on? And I see you maybe watching TV. That's not fair, right? So the ability to really speak about why you're upset, to identify why you're upset goes a long way. I guarantee you, folks, there are adults who cannot do these things, who cannot identify why they're upset. They can tell you they're mad. They can tell you what the problem is. They can tell you what they're willing to give up, what they're willing to gain, but they cannot pinpoint and tell you exactly why what you're doing is making them upset. This is one of those things that help you grow, that help you mature, right? Some things to ask yourself, right? In regards to why you're upset. Is it because your traditions or your standards are being offended? These are things that you hold value to yourself. These are things that you hold when it comes to like who you are, your personhood, right? So the being portion of being, knowing, doing, right? Are those things being compromised? Or do you feel like someone's pulling at those things or testing those values or those standards, right? Is there a safety or health concern, right? That's a great way to just express why you feel upset. My immediate safety, my immediate health is at danger whenever this happens. Express that, right? Is there a personal difference, right? Do you feel like there's something that, you know, they just do that just doesn't fit you? Speak on it, right? Express why you are upset. Don't be afraid to express why you're upset, okay? Oh, this is a really good point. Oh my goodness. So one thing to think about, do you have a personal shortcoming? Are you displaying immaturity, intolerance, narcissism, or an uncaring or unloving attitude? Right next to that, I wrote something. I put hard pill to swallow. Hard pill to swallow. I think one of the hardest things for us to do as people is to take those three fingers that are looking at us when we point at someone and take a hard look at ourselves, right? And look at all of the things in us that may be making us, right? Sometimes we say we're upset about certain things, but there may be something that we're doing that we're not even noticing that may be affecting the situation, right? So think about those things. Are you displaying immaturity? Is this really something that you should be upset about? And Festus, I want you to talk about this because that's a really good one. Are you displaying immaturity, intolerance, narcissism, or an uncaring or unloving attitude? Man, but that narcissism and that uncaring, unloving attitude go almost hand in hand to me. And the reason why I say that is because usually if people are narcissists, which means a very strong like self-concern for oneself, not really concerned about the well-being or, or others, just not concerned about the well-being, not concerned about the personhood of others, more concerned with yourself. Mm-hmm. So because of that, it's very easy to uncare about other people. It's very easy to unlove and kind of keep a lot of that for yourself. So how do you navigate that, Festus, when you're going over that step 3, talking about why you're upset, right? Identifying why you're upset. Because I know a lot of times we can see it in other people, but how do we do with it if we're seeing that in ourselves?
And that's that's really profound what you just said, especially about seeing it in other people, because oftentimes what we see in others is a reflection of what's in us. And the thing is, why? Because we have a sense of what that is, but we're not able to necessarily articulate it in others. And sometimes it's the thing that we don't like in ourselves that we push on the others. And from a psychological perspective, that's projection, that's a projection. And so when a person is really inward facing, self-centered, and they're not necessarily being loving and they're not necessarily being kind to others, part of that thought process is usually self-preservation. That's one of the biggest things. I don't want to get hurt, therefore I hurt, right? Because if I'm the bully on the street, then guess what? Nobody can bully me. And so there's a sense in which a person doesn't want to open up for doubt, fear, shame, that they're going to get hurt. And this is the thing. You have to almost be open to the experience of being hurt, but balance it out with also the good things that can happen. And so I don't want to go too deep into this, but there's a thing that they call gestalt psychology. And this is where, you ever watch those things in the movies where they put the ink block up and they're like, what do you say? What do you say?
Yeah.
And so this thought process is you develop something in your own mind about what is there, regardless of whatever the image is. And this is a form of the human imagination, because literally your imagination can carry you away, especially when you get in these conflict situations. And so this is why you really have to process it and say, okay, there is what's called the foreground, and then there's the background in gestalt psychology. So the foreground is the main thing you see, and then there's the stuff in the back that's not as clear, right? And so you want to eventually try to make those match up and even. And so what ends up happening is somebody stepped on your shoes, okay? Because of your perception of my shoes are clean, I spent money on these shoes, I work hard on these shoes, this person offended me, now I need to assault them, right? In the foreground, we're not even thinking like, oh, it could just be a mistake and it's a crowded room. Because there's 100 people in the room, but we're just thinking about us. You see what I'm saying? And so these are simple things. Same thing can happen in the classroom. You're sitting here, you're trying to do your work and they keep talking, like, just shut up, shut up. They said, if I get in trouble again, then whatever happens, and now I'm being offensive to others, are you getting me in trouble? And it's like, dog, if you would have just calmed down and been like, hey, Mr. Shorunke, they're being a little loud. Is there a way I can move? You see what I'm saying? And so this is why we have to really process those things out. Because again, and this is one thing one of my mentors taught me a long time ago. They said, kids need what adults need. So don't ever not give a kid, whatever talk or whatever kind of information. He said, why? Because when they grow up and they don't get it as a kid, they're not going to have it as an adult. And so that's one of the hardest things is, like you said, we see adults who can't do this. We literally are walking around with other adults who can't process their emotions in this way. And so therefore they make a lot of rash decisions. And look at what's happening right now. Post or in the midst of COVID, you have a rise in murders, you have a rise in random shootings, right? You have a rise in these things because people aren't able to deal with them and nobody's really really dealt with this stuff. And I get it, you know, especially from a school system perspective. Teachers are supposed to teach. They're not supposed to be psychologists and social workers and this and that. And that's part of the reason why as LYS, we do what we do here, because it's like, you can't give up an hour on a Sunday to, if we're dropping some gems, please just share this. Just hit like and share if we're dropping some gems. You know what I'm saying? And this is the thing, a lot of people don't understand how hard it is to bring mental health into the community. Yes, it could be part of the conversation, but to actually bring it in the community. If you talk about just a psychologist, a school psychologist, you have 4 years, then you have 2 to 3 years for a master's. That's 7 years of learning right there, right? And that's if they got their bachelor's in 4 years. So they might have got it in 5 or 6. So now you're looking at 8 to 9 years. And then you're talking about 3,000 hours of observation sitting under another psychologist. Okay, so this is the thing this is why sometimes, I'm gonna be honest, I get so upset at these idiots. Idiots. They're complete idiots in the school system, okay? You say, well, we need more mentors and coaches and this and this and this who come from that background. Do you think a person who comes from an impoverished background has 8 and 9 years to go unpaid, and then another year and a half of 40 hours a week to continue to go unpaid? And they're from an impoverished background. You're literally burying them in debt. So the thing is, and we see this, there's a lot of women who have PhDs, doctorate degrees, but they're sitting $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in debt. Okay, so now let me ask you a question. If you got $300,000 in debt, okay, you're paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month in student loans. Are you going to go work in a Title I school? Or are you going to go work where somebody's going to pay you enough so you can pay off the student loans and actually live a decent, comfortable life? So until you could solve one problem, which is very easy, is just say, okay, let's push out a little bit more scholarship in this direction. Okay, okay, let's make sure that, okay, again, the student loan repayment programs, when you're signing up for the job, we're signing you into that at the same time. Okay, so you know your loans are going to get not this, oh, wait 5 years, you forget, we forget. Come on, man, let's think about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's think about this, okay? Because why? It's costing the community, it's costing people their lives. You know. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. That's why I shouldn't be talking, but because I go off.
No, it's no worries, Festus. It's good. Absolutely. I see about my main man Daniel laughing over there in the background. Our third host, Daniel Hill.
What up, y'all? What's good? You all right?
We doing good, man. We doing good.
I see you outside.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
I forget Cajun something cuisine, bro. It's New Orleans food. Woo-wee!
It's not where we were last week, Festus.
Well, I don't know which one he went to. Was it at Sugar's? Was it?
Yeah, Sugar's, bro.
Okay, what?
Bless the Lord. Bless the Lord. That's what
You know, Olay only got one plate up there, man. I was like, I'm gonna get a second plate just because. You know?
So,
and the Bible says the cup overflowing. Okay? I had 3 cups overflowing. Hey man, but you on point, man. These people want people to come in there and work for free, bro. They want people to come work for free. That makes no damn sense. It's just like you said. If you want more teachers and more people who work on with their mental problems, give them the money first, and then you know what I'm saying. I mean, you can't wait for that 5 years. I mean, I'm broke after 5 years. You know what I'm saying? Who can pay $5,000 a month? That's crazy, bro.
It is.
Absolutely, man, for sure, absolutely. Well, folks, we're currently going over conflict resolution. I guess you could say conflict resolution for teens, right? So we've gone over the first 4 steps. We talked about, first 3 steps. We talked about deciding what you're willing to let go, and deciding what you're willing to keep when it comes to conflict resolution, right? What are you willing to let go? What are you willing to keep? Step 2, identify the problem, right? You got to identify the problem, see what the problem is, right? Step 3, identify why you're upset. Identify why you are upset, right? And so we talked about different reasons. Is it a health or personal concern? Is it a situational thing? Is it a personal shortcoming, right? Are you dealing with immaturity? Are you dealing with intolerance? Are you dealing with narcissism? Are you dealing with uncaring, unloving, an uncaring or unloving personality, right? Identifying those things. What do we talk about? Peace. It leads to peace. It leads to, if you're trying to mature, it leads to maturing. What was the other thing we talked about? Peace, reducing stress. Sorry, that's the one. Reducing stress. It helps with reducing your stress, the things that you deal with, right? I can promise you, if you learn just the basis of conflict resolution, the benefits of it when it comes to reducing your stress, when it comes to bringing you peace, especially in this world, right? I want you to think about what we've been through in the last 2-3 years. The amount of stress, we were already dealing with a high amount of stress already. And it's really funny because I was looking at this map, and it was a map of the happiest and the saddest places, like, you know, just like measurements of the happy. And basically from a 1 to 10 scale. And I saw that it said that United States was like pretty up there. It was like a 7. And I was like, when was this taken? I mean, I guess we're happy, but are we? Who did you ask? Did you ask everybody?
Exactly.
Did you? So is that an average, or is that, you know? I had so many questions because I'm looking at a lot of other countries, and it was really low. And I know it may be a low quality of life in terms of like income, what you're able to bring in, but I mean, if you're living on a farm, I mean, I don't know. The reason why I said it is because I feel like there's a very strong push right now for a lot of people to kind of get away and move away from the hustle and bustle, and that's very similar to what it is in a lot of other countries. So it's one of those. I know my dad always deals with this when he has family members calling him from Nigeria. You know, he always says, these people, they think we're living in the land flowing with milk and honey. I have to sweat before I can get $1. You know, my dad always, what he always says. And it's very true, right? It's perspective. So, you know, I just thought it to be kind of funny, trying to understand, you know, where a lot of these things are coming from, because we are dealing with a lot of stress. And here's the important thing. If we as adults are dealing with that, I can only imagine what our young folks are dealing with. Sorry, go ahead, Festus.
No, I was going to say that's a big point, because the thing is, they have even less tools available to them to deal with these things, right? Because especially when you're talking about a teenager, this is where a lot of resentment builds up in young teens, right? Because obviously, you know, if you depend on how you look at it, you know, Erik Erikson basically says by about 12 to 14 years old, you have already framed the way that you view the world, and now you're trying to operate in that frame, right? But the thing is, when you look at that, and now it's like, okay, I'm trying to operate in that frame. This is why 14, 15, 16-year-olds always do dumb stuff, because they're trying to operate in a frame that's not well established. But then imagine your frame is within another person's frame, you know, because again, you're looking at your parents and you're saying, man, they frustrated, they're breaking stuff, they're throwing stuff, they're cussing each other out. Well, shoot, they're just going to take it to the next degree. You know what I'm saying? And obviously it becomes harder to penetrate the older person gets. And so it's really tough, and it's really sad, because it's almost like you wish there was like a happy camp, right? Or like a, hey, once you reach this age, you need to go to happy camp to choose, will you be happy and do well in society, or will you just continue in this path, right? But you know, it's crazy. Yeah.
Most def, absolutely. So I think this is actually a good place for us to stop. The reason why is because we got 2 more steps, and then we've got some questions that we're going to go over. So next week's going to be really cool, because we're going to go through like a little activity to where we finish talking about conflict resolution, and then we start talking about influences, right? So I'm going to give you a little hint. We're talking about who are your influences, why are they your influences, what have they done, what are the actions that they have done to lead you to become, that led you to make them your influence. And then we're going to start asking those same questions about yourself. Why are you, or who do you influence? What are you doing? Because that actually mixes in exactly what Festus was just talking about, where you talked about Erikson, and in those ages of 12 to 14, you start to gain your own, your worldview, right? and your worldview is literally mingling or co-mingling with other people and their worldview. And it's just literally, that's all it is, right? I mean, I think you put that together wonderfully, Festus. It's just matching up with other people's worldviews. I actually met a friend a couple years ago, and we went to middle school together. And we were in the 6th grade together. And she said, one thing I remembered about you, Olay, is that if you said something, you believed it, and you believed it to be true, no one could talk you down. Like it was literally law. Like you were so stubborn. If you said this is orange and it's yellow, you were gonna say it's orange till the end of the world. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. And it was funny because there were a couple of times we were playing like a card game or something, and she said, but you would have. She said, you should have did this, because if you would have did that, you would have won. And I was like, no, I don't think I had that. I think if I would have did this, I would have won. And she was like, no. And she kept arguing. And so I realized what she was doing. She was literally, she already knew, I guess she was seeing the 6th grade me who refused to take anything as correct, right? Being stubborn. And she was like, no, I'm telling you would have won. I was like, and I was just like, okay. Because by then I had already kind of grown out of that, where I was like, well, sometimes I've been humbled, right? And sometimes I realize I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But in either way, it's just like, this is way too small to make a big deal about. I was like, okay, it's whatever. It's just a card game, right? And so it was just funny to do that. She was literally, I felt like she was arguing with the 6th grade me, and I'm like 20-something years old, right? And so that's what happens when you grow, when you learn and you grow. When you do things like conflict resolution, you're able to, it's not just one thing. It's one thing to just take it in. It's another thing to take it in and actually practice it, right? To actually use it, right? You use it and you say, this went well, this did not go well. The next time I do this is what I'll do differently. Folks, that's how you ladder your success, right? Folks, it has been another wonderful Sunday here. We are so excited. We've been going about, what is this? Is this like about almost 3 months, Festus? Or we're right about?
Yeah.
About 3 months, man.
We up there.
I think since the start of the new year, right?
Yeah.
In January.
Mm-hmm.
Man, so wonderful. So awesome. So ecstatic about the growth that we've got going here at LYS. Really great talk today on conflict resolution. Next week, we're going to finish up conflict resolution. We're going to do that wonderful activity with influences. Hopefully we'll get some examples out there to see some of the people that the kids follow, and we'll talk about them, what makes them influences. Mr. Beast, wonderful guy there on YouTube, talk about how he's able to have such a wonderful following there. Talk about examples like that, right? So as always, my name is Olay. This is Festus Daniel Hill, who is currently not indoors. He's not inside. He's actually outside. He's outside. Thank you so much for joining us again. Festus, you want to hit him with the quote?
Absolutely. There are legitimate reasons for not going to college. There's no legitimate reason for not getting an education. And so I'm Festus Amoye, Olay, Shorunke, Mr. Daniel Hill. Thank you all so much. And with that, we are complete.
Oh, you're still there? Well, thank you so much for listening to the LYS podcast.